fine. There we go. Now I know.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to what I believe is the culmination of a series of interviews with the women who are being honored with Women of Reform Judaism's Women's Empowerment Awards on May 13th. This is the last of these enlightening weekly conversations, which have given each of our honorees an opportunity to highlight their achievements and share their wisdom by engaging in discussion here on Facebook Live. And today, I am absolutely delighted to be joined by Honoree Marra Gad. Now, Marra is an award-winning author. I know many of you know her work. She's a speaker and an independent writer and producer. As president of EGAD Productions, she oversees the development and production of scripted television series and films. And Marra speaks internationally about her own transracial adoption in 1970 and her experience being Black, white, biracial, and Jewish through the lens of her debut memoir, The Color of Love, A Story of a Mixed-Race Jewish Girl, which was the winner of the 2020 Midwest Book Award for Autobiographies and Memoirs. And last Friday and over the weekend, it was the #1 bestseller in Jewish biographies on Amazon. It's a wonderful book. If you have not read it, I highly, highly recommend that you do. Very terrific. And we'll probably talk a little more about that. In the nomination package for the award, Marra is quoted saying, "As women, we are often taught and encouraged to be small and silent. Each time a woman stands up and speaks her story in her own voice, I believe that it empowers us all. It is my hope that I do that each time that I speak." Wow. So Marra, can we start maybe by probing a bit more your thoughts on empowerment and what women's empowerment means to you and to your career and life's work?
Absolutely. And thank you for such a generous and very kind introduction and for being my partner this morning. As you know, it's my first Facebook Live event, so I'm very excited to be here. And I am very honored to be a 2020 honoree for the Women's Empowerment Award through the WRJ. I don't believe that there is a woman or a non-binary person who doesn't know what it means to be expected on some level to be small and silent. We are taught societally, sometimes we are taught culturally, we are taught by the tribes that make us that we need to go along to get along. We should just take what we're given. We should smile and say thank you. We should be so flexible that we don't just bend, we break in pursuit of not being confrontational. God forbid you be confrontational. And so as we are taught this, right? And we pass it on, l'dor v'dor, we teach other children to be this way. And we are finally, as women, I think, choosing more and more to say no to that. And so for me, the first step in that journey was to claim my voice. And it took me until I was well into my 40s. Writing my book was the first time that I threw it all away. Because as you might imagine, I speak very powerful, painful truths about what it is to live in a world that still clings to the notion that Jews are white and Black and brown people are Muslim or Christian. That's painful to talk about. It's painful to hear about. And when I would quietly try to have those conversations, people were like, let's not talk about that. It was uncomfortable. And so people turned away. Me writing a book said, okay, be uncomfortable, but I'm going to say it anyway. And then me becoming a speaker was the next step in that. And so what I've learned about empowerment is that it is absolutely about the things we now talk about all the time societally, about claiming our voices, about claiming our truths, about having boundaries, about standing up and saying, I know my worth. This is my worth, and I will not take less than my worth. It is about sort of spreading your wings, right? As opposed to shrinking. But here's the other piece of empowerment that I've come to learn. All of those things are 100% true. But I think the other part about him being empowered is being able to say, I have more to learn. I can do better. It is about also being accountable when we've done something wrong, right? There is this misconception that empowerment is just this, guns blazing superhero moment. But I think it's also quieter. It's about doing that cheshbon hanefesh, that searching of our own souls, to say, what is my truth here? Can I do better? Did I do wrong? And being able to gracefully sit in that truth too. I think that is also empowerment. And I also think it is asking the question, am I, by my example, by my life, by my light, am I also empowering others? We talk a lot about men and the way that men treat women and non-binary people. But as women, I do think we have to ask, are we also participating in that? Or are we lifting other women up? So I think it's a broader expanse than what I once ever considered it was. And it's something I consider as I continue to evolve. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And I'd like to follow up because you talk so beautifully about, there's an introspective piece of this, but it's also, what am I doing to lift others up? How am I empowering others? Can you give us an example? What's your proudest moment of lifting the voices of others who may not have a platform to do it themselves?
My proudest moment was actually a very quiet one. My father died of a very rare and aggressive form of leukemia in early 1990. And back then, it is when HIV and AIDS was just coming onto the national forefront of discussion. And there was so much misunderstanding. There was vilification of people who had AIDS. People were just, don't touch them. You'll die if you touch them. Well, my father was hospitalized almost the entirety of his 4-month illness. And when I would go visit him in the hospital, I would see these doors with giant red dots on the door. And nobody ever went into those rooms, and nobody ever came out of those rooms. And there were always these trays of food on the floor that had never been touched. And so I asked one of the nurses, I said, what is going on in those rooms with the red dots? And she was like, oh, those are the AIDS patients. And you don't want to go in there. Nobody goes in there. Nobody visits them. It's not safe. It's not this. And I said, well, they're not eating. They have no visitors. And she said, well, I'm not going in there. I don't want to go, there was this. And so I made the decision that every time that I went to visit my father, I was going to go and make sure that I visited at least 2 rooms that had red dots on the door.
Wow.
And so I would suit up in basically a hazmat suit, and I would go in and bring their food in and talk to them. And it wasn't a public display. But I felt like it was my way of saying, you have every right to be here. You have every right to be treated with love and with decency and with dignity, and to be held while you are sick, just like we are holding my father. We believe my father lived longer because we held him in love. And so I wanted to pay that forward to a group of people that clearly had such limited support. And so for me, as I considered that question when I was preparing, I think that for me is one of my most, important choices that I ever made. And I didn't care if other people knew about it. I didn't care if other people knew what I was doing. I was told by the hospital staff that I was, doing it at my own risk. They were like, we do not support this. We don't believe in this. You should not be doing this. And I was like, well, I'm going to do it anyway. And so for me, I think that's my proudest moment.
That is an amazing example and a beautiful example of just what that question was about. Because at that time, when there was such fear, and we've been going through something similar with COVID, especially in the early days with no vaccine, no treatment, people isolated, nobody visiting. but you didn't even have the option to do,
Right.
Marra, what you did, because you couldn't get into.
And with the HIV and AIDS patients, there was so much misinformation
Yep.
and bias and hate toward gay people, right?
Yes.
In 1990, we were referring to AIDS as gay cancer.
Yeah.
And so it was different from COVID. AIDS was loaded with hate and bias.
Yes, it was. It was.
AIDS was loaded with hate and bias. And so, yeah, I will never forget seeing those people ever in my life.
And they probably never forgot or have never forgotten that visit. It had to have meant so much to them. So thank you for that, for sharing that as an example of something that everyone can do. It doesn't have to be a big production with a brass band and skywriting. Something that you can do, anyone can do on their own. If you see someone, if you recognize a situation where someone is marginalized, is excluded, we can all engage. We can all speak up. We can all make a difference.
Or just be kind, just
be kind. Be
hand.
kind.
Just, I think there is so much pressure today to seem like you're doing, and what are you doing? And I think sometimes action, empowerment, I think sometimes it's very quiet. It is simply stretching out a hand to someone who needs one.
So I think you've kind of addressed this, but not as explicitly, because I think Jewish values underpin what you're talking about. But is there a time that it was maybe conscious that Jewish values informed and influenced what you were doing, the work you were doing? And how do you think Jewish values and empowering others intersect?
For me, I don't think there isn't a time when it, listen, I'm Jewish, and I was steeped in, raised in, grown in a proudly, deeply Jewish home and an environment. And so I don't think I think it's just simply who I am. I don't think that I get up every day and say, I'm going to take out my Jewish values today and I'm going to, I think it's just who I am. But I will say that when I consider what it is about Judaism that I think does inform the notion of empowerment and inform actually what it means, to go out in the world and to speak and be and do. My rabbi was the much beloved late Herman Schallman in Chicago. He is considered very much a forefather of the Reform movement. He founded Untitled in Oconomowoc. And he was a tremendous bridge builder in his own right in Chicago. He came over from Germany in the 30s. He narrowly escaped Nazi Germany. And so he was one of those 5 rabbis that we hear about. And I remember being in confirmation class, actually probably even younger than confirmation class. And he would say, as Jews, it is our obligation to question everything. We are here to ask questions. And if you consider what happens in a yeshiva, right? They sit with a text for days and study that text and ask questions. And so I knew Rabbi Schallman taught me early on, ask your questions, which was his way of saying, speak your truth, and so and he held that as a Jewish value alongside the notion of civil discourse, that we can ask our questions and we can speak our truth, and we don't always have to agree. We won't agree. We can't even agree on how to spell Hanukkah in English. Right? There's like 17 ways to spell Hanukkah in English, and we can use them all. But to be able to speak your question, have it answered, discuss that, and still part respectfully. I think that's actually what I dream of in this moment, right? I dream that we will go back to a time where that is more widely embraced.
Yeah, where we can have conversations kind of agree to disagree, but able to have the civil discourse, ask questions, answer questions,
Yes.
provide points of view, learn from one another, yes,
Yes.
all of that.
And we don't even, we are now so self-segregated because of the internet and because of social media, and because I think of the very polarized times in which we live, that we now self-segregate, and we almost refuse to hear another side of the story. I actually once I had a very profound interaction with a member of Proud Boys on Instagram. A member of Proud Boys, I had posted something about our right to free speech in America. And I said, listen, I don't agree with the neo-Nazis, and I don't agree with the Klan, and, I don't agree, but do they have the right to hold their beliefs? They do. They have that right, and they have the right to speak them. They don't have the right to harm me. They don't have the right to cause physical harm, but do they have the right to say the things they want to say? In America, they actually do. And a member of Proud Boys reached out to me, and he said, do you believe that? And I said, I wouldn't have said it if I don't believe it. And he said, can we talk? And I said, as long as we have a set of ground rules about respect, yes, we can. And I had a respectful dialogue with a white supremacist who,
Wow.
I don't know that I changed him, and he certainly didn't change my views, but for those 10 minutes, we were able to engage, and it was respectful, and it was decent, and it was thank you and please, and I appreciate you explaining that to me.
Mhm.
It's possible. We just have to be willing to try.
Yeah. Well, speaking of trying, Marra,
Yes.
you give some advice to women who are fighting to be heard, who don't know how to raise their voices, have for whatever reason. What advice would you give?
I think the only advice that I can give is to know that it is an illusion that fear and hate and all of the things that keep us small and silent are bigger than our own personal power. Right? I was told for decades, do not talk about this, Marra. Nobody will want to be your friend, and nobody will like you anymore. And and I allowed that truth to keep me small and silent. It's not true. All of those things that the things that we think in our heads are so terrible. It's an illusion. And it's kind of like throwing yourself into a cold pool of water. It is going to be cold for a minute, but once you get in, the water feels fine. So I would say that you have to just know and ground yourself deeply in knowing that your truth, your light, your voice, your love is much bigger than any of the terrible things people want us to believe are out there. And that we are here to support you and to applaud you and to say, yes, we're here with you. You are not alone, I think, is the other thing that people want you to believe.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the only advice that I can give. It has to be every person's choice to do it on their terms and in their way. But I think for each of us, until you do take that first step or speak that first word, you're like, oh my God, nobody's going to talk to me, and I'm not going to have any life, and I'm going to lose everything. And, because that's what society wants you to believe. And so you have to ground yourself in knowing that won't happen.
I think folks who have joined us, that it is really clear how empowering Marra's voice is. And Marra, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. Your straightforward and compelling voice is clearly empowering. I mean, the personal experiences that you share and helping others understand how to get past that feeling that I'm small, nobody's going to listen, I can't do this, and that you can, and that it can be small and it can be quiet. And one action, one step may lead to another as you truly discover your voice, your unique voice, and where you want to engage and how you can have those conversations and take actions that are personally meaningful to you in a way that's going to make a difference.
Well, and that we can each do it in our own way, right? That
Yeah,
there are a million ways. There are a million ways. There isn't one way that's right for everyone.
great.
And that we also, I think, need to honor that as well. That, you know, some people are marchers and they're activists, and some people are educators, and some people are artists, and some people are just quiet angels that we don't even know are doing remarkable things in their way. And all of it makes us better.
Well, Marra, thank you so much for this conversation. And folks, if you want more, I'm going to tell you how you can do it. It is not too late to register for the Women's Empowerment Awards event on May 13th. You can go to the website wrj.org, or you can click on that QR code in the corner of my box there. Marra and I are going to be on a panel together and joined by one of our other honorees, Liz Dunst, and we'll be having a conversation about educating and championing inclusivity in our reform communities. So more conversation there. It would be terrific. We hope to see you there. And I also today want to thank Natalie Bowles, who you can't see, our WRJ philanthropy associate, who's been providing our technical support for this Facebook Live session and the ones previously. We do post all the recordings, so if you've missed any of the prior honorees, they're posted on WRJ's Facebook page, Women of Reform Judaism. Go take a look and watch them. It's a really, truly amazing group of women who are being honored. And Marra, once again, thank you and congratulations.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for being such a wonderful conversation partner this morning, Blair. I'm looking forward to our larger conversation on the 13th.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Take care, y'all.